Hi, my YouTube family. Remember to like my video and share my video. And those who haven't subscribed to Bev Brown channels, please do so. Alright, this is a story about Esther, Mordecai, and Esther. Alright, a lot of you know this story, but many don't. So I'm gonna start reading from Esther 5. I'm gonna read from verses 1 through 14. Okay, and then I illustrate and tell you more about it. Alright. Now it came to pass, and the third day, that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner courts of the king's house, over against the king's house. And the king sat up on his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the courts, that he obtained favor in his sight, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of this scepter. Then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther, and what is thy request? It shall be given thee to the half of the kingdom. And Esther answered, If it seems good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. Then the king said, Cause Haman to make haste, and that he may do as Esther had said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet, and that Esther had prepared. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition? It shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even so, the half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Then answered Esther and said, My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the spirit of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to reform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet, and I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king had said. Then went Haman forth that day, joyful, with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called his wife, Zedreth, his wife, and Haman told them of the glory of his riches and the multitude of his and the multitude of his children, and all the things wherein the king has promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the prince and servants of the king. Haman said, moreover, Yea, Esther the queen did let no man come with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared, but myself, and tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. Yet all this awaited me nothing, as long as I see Mordecai the Jews sitting at the king's gate. Then said Zedred his wife, and all his friends unto him, Let a gallows be made of 50 cubits height, and tomorrow speak thou unto the king, that Mordecai may be hung thereon. Then go thou in merrily and with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallop to be made. All right. Here end the reading of Esther chapter 5, verses 1 to 14. And I'm going to go on now to get the full understanding of it to Esther chapter 6, reading from verses 1 right back to 14 again. All right. And that night could not the king sleep, and commanded to bring the book of record of the Chronicles. So the king could not sleep and command them to bring the book of record of the Chronicles, that he may read them. And it was found written that Mordecai has told of the tarnished two of the king's chambers, that keepers of the door, who sought that they would lay hand on the king. And the king said, what honor and dignity hath been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servant that minister unto him, there is nothing done for him. And the king said, who is in the court? Now Naaman has come unto the outward court of the king's house to speak unto king to hang Mordecai. And the gallows that he had prepared. And the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman standing on the court. And the king said, let him come in. Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man who the king delighted to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to do honor more than to him myself, that he thought that it was him, Haman, the king gonna do honor to. And Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delighted to honor, let the king, listen now, let the royal apparels be bought, which the king uses to wear, and the horse that the king rideth up on, and the crown royal which he has set upon his head, and let this apparel on horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble prince, that they may arrange the man withal whom the king delighted to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street to the city, and proclaim before him that thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighted to honor. Then the king said to Haman, make haste and take the apparel and the horse, as thou art said, and do even to Mordecai the Jews that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of that thou art spoken. Then took Haman the apparels and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighted to honor. And Mordecai came against the king gate, but Haman hasted to his house, mourning and having his head covered. And Haman told Zedred his wife and all the friends everything that has befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zedred his wife unto him, If Mordecai of the seed of the Jews become before whom thou art begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. And while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chambermaid, and hasted to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther has prepared. All right, so I'm going to read Esther 7, reading from verse 1 through to 10. Hope this video don't be long, but get the story. So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen, and the king said unto Esther the second day at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. What is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to half of my kingdom. Then Esther the queen answered and said, If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if I have pleased the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, and to be slain, and to perish. But if we has been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I have held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then the king answered and said unto Esther the queen, Who is he that, and where is he that just presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, The adversary and enemy is the wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, and unto the palace garden, and Haman stood up to make requests for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden unto the palace of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Queen Esther was. Then the king said, Will he force my queen also before me in my house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face and hurried off to the chambermaid and said before the king, Behold, also the pillow, 50 cubits, which he had made for Mordecai, as spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, Hang him thereon. So they hung Haman on the gallows which he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king wrath purified. Amen. Here in the reading of this story, which really took place back then. So this story is about Mordecai and Esther. Esther is Mordecai's niece. And in those days, the king sent for all the beautiful young ladies, and Esther was one of them. And the king make Esther to be his queen because she was fairer than all the other young girls. And he fall in love with her. So Haman was a wicked man now, because the king honored him and put him above his prince and so on. He was full of himself. So he went and he didn't tell the king of Mordecai, because Mordecai overheard two men talking that they were going to kill the king. And Mordecai sent message to his niece Esther the queen and let she to inform the king. And when the king investigate the matter, it was true. So the king got those two men killed, and they were to give Mordecai something for doing such a wonderful job for saving the king's life, and they didn't. So Mordecai was at the gate every day, and Haman hated him so much because Mordecai would bow to Haman, because they made that agree that when they see Haman, they must get up and bow because of the honor that he get from the king. So Mordecai was the only one not doing that. So he was wroth with him, and the king signed some petition for them to slaughter all the Jews, so kill out all the Jews. So Esther was a Jew and Mordecai. So Mordecai sent word to Esther, and Esther learned of it. And in those days, no, you cannot enter the king's chambers unless he sent for you, else you will be killed. So the king, Esther asked the Mordecai and the rest of people to pray to God for 3 days, not to eat or drink anything for 3 days and 3 nights, and a fasting for her that she can go and enter to the king. So in faith she went up when the 3rd day was over, and the king accepted her, put out the scepter that she must touch it and accept her request, and she tell him everything of what No, she invited him to the banquet with Haman. So Haman was full of pride and boasting and tell his wife all about what is gonna happen. And then the night the king couldn't sleep, so he sent for the big book that he have to look through. But God was working. Yes, God's spirit was working in him. So when he went through the book, he saw that the man that have saved his life, and he asked, who is that man? And they said, it's Mordecai, the one that sit at the gate. And he said, what did Mordecai get as a reward? Nothing at all. So he said, all right, he want the Mordecai to be put on, so he called for Haman, and Haman came in. So Haman thought it was him going to be get the honor now, and the glory. So he was telling the king, put a royal crown on the man said, the ring that the king wore, the horse that the king ride, everything that the king used, he wanted to be placed on that man, because he thought it was him, Haman, who was going to be honored that day. So he boasted on everything, and when push come to shove, now the king said, okay, all that you said, let it come to pass, because that is for Mordecai. Go and do it to Mordecai. And he was right, because Haman hated Mordecai so much. So you see, he hated him, and he was the one who have to go on now and to dress him and to ride around town with him and tell everybody of him. No, Esther learned about it and invited him, so he have to come. And when Esther revealed the secret and let the king know that it is Haman who sent that decree for all the Jews to be killed and everything, and the king was very wroth and went in his garden. And you know what, Mordecai, Haman was so afraid. So the gallows, what he said for Mordecai, tell him to believe that he can hang Mordecai. I was coming to tell the king that Mordecai should be hung because he's not bowing to him. But instead of Mordecai being hung, the same thing that is set for Mordecai, Haman end up hung on that same gallows. So we must be very careful. The pit that we dig, sometimes we eventually fall into it. So, we should humble ourselves. This is teaching us. This, when I read it, it is telling me not to exalt myself. We should not exalt ourselves. Even if God bless us and we have abundantly, we should not be exalted. We should humble ourselves and see people just as we are, not to feel like we are above them because we can possess things that they can't. We should love and care for each other, because Haman have hate in his heart and he was full of pride, full him up, and then now see it, everything that he set up turned back on him. So his whole soul, everybody was killed, his wife, his son, his child, everybody, you see, because of his evil plot and his corrupted heart. So let us, by God help, learn to love and respect each other. Not because I have abundantly and that person don't have, I look down on that person. No, every one of us are equal in the eyes of God. We are equal, whether we have a lot of house, money, cars, and so on, money in the bank that we don't even know about, and can't angle. Let us humble ourselves. Let us humble ourselves. This video is very long. Remember to like my video and share my video, and those who haven't subscribed to Bev Brown channels, please do so. Peace out. Miss Ernestine, I know you're gonna come hitting me with this now, okay? You're my Bible scholar. Yeah, man. Let us teach one another about it. And for all my viewers, please listen to this Bible story about Esther and Mordecai and Haman and the king, and learn from it. You will learn something from it. Peace out. Bev Brown said that. Love you guys.